So today I'm going to share a little bit about one of the block printing tools that has really helped increase the number of successful prints that I do. And they are the Ternes Burton pin and tabs system. So the pin is this metal piece, and you can get them in a couple of different sizes. You want to get them in pairs. You can get them in a couple different sizes. So let me just see if I can show this to you. This is the narrow size, and this is the thicker size. So if you're using really narrow lino or really thin lino, you can use the narrow one. And of course, if you're using thick, you get the thicker one. So essentially you have a pair of the pins, at least one pair. You don't need that many. You can even get away with just getting one set. And then you want the tabs. You want a bunch of the tabs because that's what you tape to your paper. And this is what helps with keeping your paper in the right spot every time you go to print. Okay, so I'm going to show you a little bit more about how these work and what I mean and how I set this up. So I have a board here. This was my very first setup with this system. So I bought myself a carpenter square and I glued it right onto this piece of board. And then I had to do a little bit of math, not too hard of math, but a little bit of math to set up where I want my paper to be lined up. So I always primarily use this size of a lino block and then an 8x10 piece of paper. So essentially I stumped my piece of paper up into the corner, snugged the lino, measured this here, and then I divided that by half because I know that I want this to be centered. So you have this amount and that amount. So I measured this half here and I measured it along here and put this piece of tape down. And then I did that for the top and bottom. And how it works is because this is snugged up right here, then you have your piece of paper, there's your half there, right? You want to get your piece of paper lined right here, and then you're going to have an even amount on this side of blank and an even amount of unprinted on this side. And then again for the top and bottom. I know I want my paper lined up with this green painter's tape, and then I'll have an even half and half there. So then I had that set up. I had my little carpenter square jig set up, but then I needed to figure out where to tape the pins because again, I can leave these here pretty much permanently because I always print with the same size. So I just took my typical piece of paper, set it where I wanted. I took one of these tabs because the tabs slide onto the pins like that. And I just made sure that there was enough of the tab over the paper so that I could take some tape and tape it down. And you use 2 of the pins and you use 2 of the tabs. So I take my second tab and tape that down as well. Now that ensures that every time you take this piece of paper, so this is great if you're doing multiple prints or multiple layers and need excellent registration. Every time you take the paper off these pins and then put it back, it will always be in exactly the same spot. So that's why you need to make sure that it is exactly where you'd put it. And that helps you get successful registration. Now I've showed you, this is essentially, this is essentially what I do when I'm preparing to print. I take a stack of 8x10 paper and I just get it set up with a whole bunch of different tabs. So I know, I want an X number of successful prints. I do a handful more pieces of paper because even when you're doing your best, you have a few misprints. So I just get a whole bunch set up and then I have a stack of the tabbed paper ready to go. And then I take my block, which I'm not printing today, but I would have this inked up. And then, of course, at this point, I'm careful to not touch the paper until I'm ready to print, and then I just gently lay it down, and then I rub the back using my spoon or my Baron, and then I can lift it up like this and take a peek. Now, even if you're doing a single color, I still use this system, even though it takes a little bit of prep with the taping of the paper, because I can take a peek at it and go, ooh, I need a bit more rubbing, and then I can put it back down, rub again. I can even lift it up and add a little bit more ink and then put it back down and then rub it again. And that's essentially how it works. They've incredibly improved the number of successful prints because I'm able to add a little bit more ink if I need to. And then if I'm registering or need to have perfect registration, it works all the time. And just one last little tip, the tape that I'm using is removable Scotch tape. And that never pulls the paper. I never end up with any torn paper. It's really, really handy, this removable tape. So that's just a bonus little tip. And when you're buying these tabs, you can get a ton of them in a bag. And of course, if you're doing quite a few layers, it can take some time in between to dry, and then you're able to do 50 pages or 50 sheets printed or more, depending on how many of these you buy. But these, I just have a handful of sets of the pins, and I have a few of these setups in different places. So I highly recommend if you're a printmaker doing lino prints, pick up a set of these. Get a set of these. You have to order them online, at least where I live, with the amount that good quality printmaking paper costs, and having far more successful prints. It ends up being not that expensive in the end.